Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Mexi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Paper Mario, aka for those of you who live in Japan, Mario Story for the Nintendo 64. So, last time, we somehow managed able to fully begin the final chapter in the game, in some cases chapter 8, by exploring the forms of some areas and during the forms within the Bowser's Castle section, and in addition to that, we also did manage to come across into ourselves some new enemies to encounter, and despite the fact that we haven't got that much star points, but that's just mainly because at this point in time, like I said before, we are getting very close to our maximum level capacity, so as a result that was about the fact that so far, we did somehow manage to able to only collect a small amount of those star points, all thanks to the forms of those Hammer Bros, so that's besides the point. So today, for this video, is that we are about to be continuing exploring through the final chapter, specifically the Bowser's Castle portion, by going through some more rooms and trying to solve as many puzzles as we could before we're able to actually progress onwards. So because of that, yeah, everything else will be come to expect, basically. And then again, though, if we somehow manage able to make our way almost towards at the very end of the chapter, though, then we're able to actually head back into Toad's Town for presumably for the final time, to able to actually try to grind as many of those items as we could, so that way we can able to actually do a bit of a recap about the forms of those specific recipes we do need to cook. So, logically though, about the fact that that way, it should able to actually lead us to the 400% completion, while despite the fact it is a bit time consuming to me though, because unlike the forms of how it does it on, then again, on the 1000-Year Door, and in addition to Super Paper Mario, at the very least about the fact that you can able to actually keep in track of the forms of those recipes very easily, all thanks to the forms of the pause menu screens. So, anyways, as you can see, we now ended up in the next part right there, that basically though, that's where sushi comes into play. Where basically though, every time whenever you do manage to pull a chain down, basically though, that actually increases the water level. You know, kind of like the forms of how it does in one of the levels from Sonic Adventure 2, which appears to be Aquatic Mine, from the likes of Knuckles' stage. Basically though, is about the fact that this is a way about the fact that we can able to actually proceed into, let's just say the next castle key, basically. So because of that though, we always have to make sure about the fact that we have to do this part before we're able to actually continue our progress. So either way, because chances are though, this part is pretty self-explanatory, at least if you know what to do for this point. So, but if you really want to go back down again, well, suffice to say though, is about the fact that we'll explain more about that in a second, because either way, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about this is though, and that's what it appears to be for the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 16th of June today, in some cases in 2025 today, so you know what that means folks, we now on to the halfway point in terms of June already, before we move on to the next month, which appears to be July, and especially noticeable we are actually getting very close towards the end of the first half of the forms of 2025, as a matter of fact. So generally speaking though, despite with the forms of that again, a very slow beginning, which we did somehow manage able to point things out in the past few days, so regardless of anything else though, is about the fact that thankfully though, still the uploading schedule just goes all back up and running, so as per expected at this point. So anyway, in addition to that though, is about the fact that recently, during the forms of around yesterday for some time, basically though, is about the fact I don't suppose that Jewel hasn't exactly mentioned about that ever since during the forms have been her Let's Play of the forms of WarioWare DIY, specifically the DS version at first, because relatively speaking I was about the fact that here's the actual scenario, in regards to the forms of what's to come. In regards to the forms of WarioWare DIY as a game itself, logically though is about the fact, as far as what Jewel has already mentioned about this is though, that she will able to actually focusing on the DS version first, and then eventually at some point once we make our way to next month, if possible, then she can able to actually show off the WiiWare version, so that way we can able to actually see the whole entire complete experience of the forms of WarioWare DIY, or do it yourself, to be more specific than that. So, Anyway though, so now we've actually got the castle key, so now we need to able to unlock the door, and to do that though, we need to flush down the water, so that way we can able to decrease the level of the actual water. So logically though, it's about the fact that I'm almost assuming that the entire room itself is going to be flooded. So as a result though, thankfully we can able to actually completely done with that particular section, so now we can able to continue things on from this point. So I believe we're now able to actually come across into ourselves some even more enemy encounters as far as I'm aware, and right off the bat we somehow got hit on the first strike with that enemy. So yeah, terrific start on that particular room right there. But regardless of such though, thankfully we did manage to once again bring out Goombalia right there to do some more tattling. So anyway, these enemies are called Bombshell Bill, which is basically is more accurately like a golden variation of those bullet bills ever since in Chapter 1. So that's besides the point. Bombshell Bill does only have 3 HP, and in addition to that, when it comes to the attack power was 6, and lastly for defense power was none other than 0, much like the defaults of how it does it for regular bullet bills. But that doesn't stop there, because straight to the point that the bombshell bills just continuously managed able to show up constantly. This is mainly because, well, much like the defaults of how it does it for those bullet bills in Chapter 1, something tells me about the fact that we need to take care of the defaults that blasters. So because of that though, now I'm pretty sure similar to the defaults of how it does it in Chapter 1, I believe we do need able to bring out Bombette with us, so just in case we get able to do some bit of damage to that particular blaster. So because of that, yeah, everything else will become to expect, and you always have to pay attention to the bones that particular little animated portion right there. When the actual bombshell Bill decides to able to come out the blaster. So either way, chances are though is about the fact I get the feeling we have to go for this for a grand total of like maybe 4 times. So logically though, as long as you were able to actually just try to reach our maximum level capacity, which is of course level 27, then we should be able to actually skip these guys no problem, assuming of course we don't get hit by those bombshell bills basically behind our backs. So anyway, in terms of the status of the forms of the bombshell bill blasters, at least as far as we do know of, those things does have 10 HP, and attack power is 0 because they can't do anything to attack us aside from summoning more bombshell bills. And most notably though, as far as defense power is concerned, it does have 4 defense power. So because of that, yeah, that's as far as I can try to able to explain about that. And logically though, we've only come down to the final enemy we can able to come across into, but that's not going to be until for later on, that is. So either way, and it's also reassuring about this too, about the fact that as far as what Jewel has already mentioned about this ever since in her Let's Play of WarioWare DIY Let's Play so far, basically though, is that Nintendo Switch 2, in terms of the forms of the first 4 days, is doing really well, during the forms of in the beginning portion of the Switch 2's life cycle, which as a matter of fact, that the actual Switch 2 itself, at least according to the forms of the actual sales records, currently though, that the Switch 2 has actually gone into 3.5 million units sold on the first 4 days, which is very impressive for starters, especially no wonder why that Mario Kart World is the launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2, and as a matter of fact though, is about the fact that in terms of the forms of the actual game sales numbers, well, we haven't exactly got to that particular stage just yet, mainly because as far as I'm aware, I believe if I get the feeling that the next Nintendo financial results won't come until later, likely on August, or perhaps even maybe later on, I guess. I mean, time will definitely tell though, especially it's been about a month ago since we've last mentioned about the forms of the financial results for Nintendo games, at least in terms of the forms of Nintendo Switch 1 game sales units, at least as far as we do know of. So anyway, but I'm sure enough that was about the fact that I'm very proud for Nintendo Switch 2 right now, especially not only that, you know, we somehow still obtain one, but in addition to how well does, you know, Nintendo Switch 2 did. Because unlike something related to the forms of, if I can recall correctly, compared to the forms of how it does it on the Wii U, that I will say compared to the Wii U though, because I do remember back in the day, in 2012, it doesn't have that much sales units in terms of the forms of the Wii U, unlike the forms of how it does it for the PlayStation 3. or the Xbox 360 for that matter. I mean, I haven't exactly followed up the actual records on it though, but that's just mainly because it has been a very long while since I actually have last played my Wii U, mainly because, straight to the point, I've been busy playing through my Nintendo Switch 2, and speaking of the forms of Nintendo Switch 2 actually, that I've recently did manage to able to once again complete it, not only Sonic Generations, but also Shadow Generations just recently on the Switch 2 version. And for my final thoughts of that particular version of the game, I will have to admit it though right away, it is by far my favorite version of Sonic X Shadow Generations now. Mainly because, as far as I'm aware, although despite it does some glaring issues, mainly with the forms of glitches and inconsistencies, and aside from all that stuff though, everything else is like almost perfect in every way. I mean, sure, the story is nothing too groundbreaking in Sonic Generations, but compared to Shadow Generations, it's much more interesting. But still, regardless of such though, I still really love the fact that when it comes to the Switch 2 version of Sonic X Shadow Generations now actually supports 60 frames per second with both Sonic Generations and Shadow Generations, assuming of course if you managed able to set the actual mode on performance mode, because compared to image quality approximately mode, obviously though it does manage to increase the quality of the image, and somehow we still ended up in the forms of 30 frames per second with that option. But regardless of such though, it is nice to be able to actually have a full-on 60 frames per second with both games into one package. At least to be more specifically, not only can you experience the thing on TV mode, but in addition to playing the game on handheld mode if you play the thing on the go. So logically though, that makes it a little bit more of a worth it package to me though, despite what the glaring issue with the physical version of the game, which is of course, you know exactly what I'm on about, that's of course the stupid game keycard functionality, which, gee, no wonder why about the fact that recently though with Sonic Racing Cross Worlds is also now getting the Switch 2 version. Obviously though, thankfully though with that particular game on Switch 2, thankfully it does only able to actually have an upgraded version rather than just the stupid game keycard functionality, because it'll just be kind of worthless if it does seems to occur. But either way, so let's go ahead and try taking care of the forms of some more bombshell build blasters, and in addition to Koopa Patrol right there, so just in case we can able to actually save up for using flower points to able to actually try to deal with the forms of devastating you know, attacks for Bombette especially. So either way, now if you try to jump onto one of those you know, bombshell build blasters, basically though it only deals like 1 damage. So yeah, at least depending on what techniques you do, like jump or hammer. I'm generally surprised about the fact I've never actually used the hammer for quite a while, mainly because as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty much used to with the forms of the timing aspects when it comes to jumping and what have you, plus because I'm able to actually access to multitude of options for jumping anyway. Now, as far as I'm aware though, is that once we make our way to the final battle in the game, I will definitely have to sort out with the badge points, or in some cases badge equipments and stuff like that, because, well, straight to the point, if we make our way to the final boss in the game, there's only like 1 target, at least as far as we do know of, rather than just multitude of targets, unlike the forms of how it does on the past bosses, like, you know, Chapter 1 as well as Chapter 2, and I would classify the same Chapter 4 especially, and even especially noticeable with Chapter 5, 6, and 7. So logically though is about the fact that we might able to come across into a point where, well, it's hard for me to explain about this particular subject though, because we haven't exactly got to that bit yet. So hopefully though, we'll make it count by that time until whenever we make our way. Maybe likely on this coming Friday, if possible, depending on the forms of the actual process of able to actually get the last few recipes, able to actually cook some more food and what have you at some point. So anyway, and yes, much like the forms of how it does with the Hammer Bros, as you can tell, every time whenever we do manage to defeat those bombshell build blasters, obviously though we only get 1 star point. So at least depending on how many enemies we can defeat. So. And speaking of enemies though, here's the final enemy in the game, at least to be more specifically the regular enemies that we can able to come across into. And that's what appears to be none other than Dry Bones. So once again we'll bring out Goom Mario again, and we can able to title the final regular enemy encounter before the bosses. So either way, this is Dry Bones, and fundamentally speaking, I was about the fact that we can able to try to defeat him by, well, we'll explain more about that in a second. So either way, Dry Bones does have 8 HP, and attack power is 4, and finally defense power is 2. So because of that though, I'm pretty sure, similar to the forms of how it does it, you remember back in during the forms of in Super Mario RPG, right? Where basically though, we did indeed manage to able to stumble across into ourselves Dry Bones during the forms of the actual sunken ship area. Basically though, in order to able to actually finish them off, you have to try to deliberately able to finish them off with the explosion attack. I mean, that way it'll deal so much damage, and as a result, that just kills Dry Bones instantly. Well, in Paper Mario though, I'm pretty sure you have to do the same thing as last time. So as a result though, despite the fact that I'm basically all out of those flower points, so we have no choice but to oh boy, this might be felt a bit trickier for that respect. So we'll use the Electro Dash onto Dry Bones, but thankfully it does deal damage, but as you can tell, he's not being defeated completely. So because of that, we have no choice but to let the actual the star energy decides able to increase by 1, so, or just a little. Oh, there are a few rare occasions where the fact that the Koopa Troll decides able to actually summon more Koopa Troll right there, so as a result we guys are able to deal with even more Koopa Troll right there. Oh, what a coincidence, now we can able to show off what the stone cap does. And basically what this means, you'll be invincible for about few turns, but here's the thing though, you'll not be able to actually let Mario have his movesets to turn for, which as a result, this means you'll be invisible for few turns, like I said before, and logically though, that makes it a little bit more obvious right there, especially as you can see, that the Koopa Trolls decides able to actually activate the increased attack power. So no matter what though, we definitely have to deal with these guys very quickly before they start able to actually do some devastating attacks. So logically though, yeah, thankfully we are safe from here, because otherwise if we don't, then we're about to get wrecked by not only Koopa Troll, but in addition to Dry Bones as well. So because of that, good thing we did manage able to bring out the mystery item early on. So yeah, I guess that makes it pretty obvious. So, and now we can able to actually decide to get our turn back, and now we can able to actually use, let's use Refresh, because otherwise, if we manage able to switch back to Bombette for her turn, then hopefully though, we can able to actually not only try to finish off Koopa Troll, but also with the forms of Dry Bones as well, which you'll see what I mean if we somehow manage able to bring out Bombette out. So hopefully let's go ahead and use the Power Bomb here to able to do some devastating attacks for not only for Koopa Troll, but also Dry Bones too. Oh, what a coincidence. Although it might seems kind of worthless, because as far as I'm aware, we're only going to be getting a small amount of those star points for now. So anyway, so yeah, every time if you do manage to defeat Dry Bones, you're able to actually get 2 star points, which is interesting to say the least. So anyway, so I need to find a healing block somewhere, because as a matter of fact though, if I do get hit by Dry Bones for that particular bone tossing right there, I will be seriously going to be screwed if I don't seem able to actually try to avoid that particular points worth noting for. But thankfully though, we can able to actually try to find the correct route to able to actually try to figure out where we're supposed to go right here. So as a matter of fact though, conveniently enough, we did indeed manage to come across into ourselves the actual healing block after all. So yeah, everything else will be come to expect. So let's go ahead and backtrack for a bit and try to deal with the forms of yet another Dry Bones right there. Although I would have liked able to use Bombette to able to actually try to deal with the forms of First Strike, but it's just about the fact that the actual bone throwing attack, what Dry Bones just did, comes off as way too fast. So, oh well, no big deal. So let's go and use the Power Bomb again. So I would have liked able to actually try and normally use the Mega Bomb, but I might not do it from now on, just because as you can tell, we are getting very, very, very close towards our final level up in the game. So I can't believe time itself is going flies by. So, but anyway, Yeah, let's discuss upon the forms of the next subject, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, did you guys know, it's been 10 years ago, since with the forms that, particularly speaking of, is about the fact that it's been 10 years ago, since when Nintendo did manage able to did, the E3 presentation back in 2015. Now, I do remember back in the day, when they did manage able to bring some interesting announcements while looking back. Like, for instance, though, is about the fact I still really love the actual visual presentation about the forms the entire presentation handles, because the actual visual style, it feels remarkably similar to, remember how Jim Henson, that he did manage able to make all sorts of projects for the sake of the forms of the Muppets, like Kermit the Frog, or Miss Piggy, Gonzo, and etc, etc. Basically, though, they did the actual presentation all about not only the forms of Reggie, but also with the forms of Shirati I think is what it says anyway. They able to actually become Muppets counterparts, which is pretty interesting, all things considered. Especially concerning for the fact that, well, it's hard for me to explain about this though, really, because we already know for the fact that, like I said before, it's been 10 years since, you know, Nintendo E3 2015 did somehow comes into play. And as far as the games library, while looking back on it though, I do remember I've got immediately hyped about the forms of not only Star Fox Zero, which for longest time that I've been waiting for that game for so long, but every nowadays though about the fact that a lot of players out there seem to, for whatever reason, despise the forms of Star Fox Zero from now on, but that's mainly because of the criticism about the forms of how terrible the motion controls can be, and on top of all that stuff though, it's just literally basically the HD version of Star Fox 64 all over again. But the noticeable difference is of course, new features such as the forms of, you know, gyro vehicle, whatever you want to call it. I mean, for me though, I've never actually touched upon the game for quite a long time, but that's just mainly because I've only got there for the sake of the forms of the collection anyway, but I haven't exactly played it yet, but that's just mainly because at that point in time for the Wii U, I'm still basically playing through not only Mario Party 10 for some mini games to try out, but in addition to, well, anything else though, really. But either way, and also I was immediately excited about the forms of some more information about the forms of Super Mario Maker, because as you probably already expect, that back in 10 years ago, that game was meant to be for a celebration for the 30th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise after all. In addition to that, I was also incredibly hyped back then with the forms of Yoshi's Woolly World, because you know, the art style looks remarkably amazing, which I still really wish that that particular game will be ported over to Switch, or every nowadays with Switch 2, but regardless of anything else though, is about the fact that, like we've already established that since on Friday, that so far we actually got ourselves the next Splatoon game is going to be on its way, which appears to be the spin-off entry in the series, which you probably already know about that. So, and in addition to that, I was also immediately hyped about it back in the day with the forms of the existence of the announcement of the newest entry of the Mario Luigi series back then, which appears to be Mario Luigi Paper Jam, or Paper Jam Brothers if you lived in the UK, which as a result, or the European version to be more specific than that. So, but every once in a while though, it's about the fact that a lot of players out there seem to don't really care about the forms of Paper Jam anymore, just because of the forms of the actual, well, let's just say, for instance though, the story and as well as the environments look a bit so much more generic, like almost reminds us about the forms of the new Super Mario Bros. Worlds, which nothing new, nothing original, or anything else like that, aside from pretty good music for the time, but it's just about the fact that I have to admit that right away, it's also been ages since I actually have last played Mario Luigi Paper Jam Brothers, but that's just mainly because, well, at that point in time, that I basically decided able to play some different games elsewhere, so I digress. So, and also about the fact, I've noticed about the fact that a lot of players out there get a lot of controversial hate about the falsely existence of not only Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, because as far as I'm aware, that game is basically just like a bare bones Mario Tennis game, especially concerning for the fact that there's no special games to play, and in addition to that though, just very lackluster chord selections, so yeah, you get the idea about that. And in addition to that, that could be also applied with the forms of the existence of Metroid Prime Federation Force, which we already know for a fact that back in 10 years ago, there's a lot of dislikes about the forms of the actual announcement of Metroid Prime Federation Force. So, but yeah, that's as far as I can try to able to explain about this for right about now, because as you can see, we're now able to actually come across into ourselves the next quiz thing, except this time, that as you can see on screen, we have to answer for about, let's just say, 5 questions in total. Although, ultimately though, in order able to try to do it successfully though, is that as you can tell, so far we actually did done 2 correct answers, but if you get like, let's just say, 3 wrong answers, something will happen, which I'm afraid to tell you about the fact I don't think I can able to show this off. But, luckily though, CapKing74 did manage to able to actually show that off, if he does manage to able to answer those questions incorrectly. So that ultimately though, I always attempt to go for the, well, the traditional way by going into the correct answers. So, basically though, as you can see, there are certain enemies do come out of the doors, and basically though, your job is to simply try to focus, and you have to simply try to answer those questions correctly. So, and like for instance though, let's go for 2 right there, because I see there's only 2 Goombas on this particular part, so yeah, everything else checks out there. And now we come to the final question of this particular section right there, and then once we're done with that, we can now able to proceed. But again, if you get like 3 incorrect answers in a row, then something tells me about the fact that you remember back in Journey of Phones Event Chapter 4, right? That we've only come across into ourselves only 1 anti-guy enemy? Well, it turns out about the fact that, I think that's 4, because I can only see 2 arms with 2 enemies separately, because as far as I'm aware, Goomba does not have any arms. So, logically though, we somehow answered every single question, so we can now proceed. So, however though, if you're about the fact that no matter what though, like I said earlier, if you get 3 incorrect answers in a row, you're able to actually force able to fight not only 1, not 2, but 3 anti-guys filled to the brim with 50 HP and aggressive attack power. So because of that, generally speaking, it's definitely a little bit more of a tougher enemies to deal with. So, but it will be a good thing for you if you try to go after some more star points if you wanted to. But ultimately though, as you can tell, we are getting very close to our final level up in the game, so what's the point about doing that anyway to me though? But logically though, is about the fact that if you do manage to able to try to deal with the forms of all 3 anti-guys in that particular singular battle, then not only are you able to actually get yourself some more star points, but also you can able to progress. So, thankfully though, you don't have to necessarily try to able to like, well, try that quiz again, assuming if you accidentally get a game over, that's the only thing you have to worry about. So, but logically though, we somehow got ourselves our next jamming jelly, so we'll save that for later for cooking scenarios. So again, time can wait for specifically until later on in this week. So anyways, let's go and deal with some more Dry Bones and Magic Koopa especially, even though we only deal with some bit of damage to Magic Koopa right there, but we can able to finish him off like so. And back into what I was saying about the phones, it's been 10 years ago since, you know, E3 2015 for Nintendo, that I also do sort of remember about the fact I was a little bit concerned about The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, because as far as I'm aware, that game is basically like the 3DS equivalent to, let's just say, The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords or 4 Swords Adventures, except there's only 3 players as opposed to 4. So, and when I did manage to able to receive the game back then, I was very, very disappointed with that game to me though. Definitely one of my least favorite Zelda games to me, because even then, alongside with the forms of Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link, because the forms of a different gameplay genre, which, you get the idea for that point. So, oh, and by the way, every time whenever we do manage to progress onwards to the final chapter, as you can tell, the music starts to get a little bit more upbeat and also a lot more energetic as well, because straight to the point, we're actually getting very close to the top. So, and there's another rest area right there, so it's a good thing we've already taken care of the forms of yet another Koopa Troll right there. So, logically though, thankfully we can able to once again restore our HP and flower points and star energy as well. So, good thing we've already able to actually do something like that. So, But, yeah, I think that's as far as I can try to discuss upon on things, although, there's also reassuring about this too. It's been 10 years ago since when Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games was first announced, not only for the 3DS, but also for the Wii U as well, and while looking back on it though, it was alright when it comes to able to actually experience the game again, while despite the fact that the Miiverse functionality is no longer there anymore, because, the service is shut down since in 2017, so in just about a couple of months after the Nintendo Switch was released, so, which I found was a little bit bizarre with that particular timing aspect when it comes to likely shutting down services for, well, certain aspects for the Wii U and the 3DS especially, so, anyway, so we can able to actually eat up the Super Shroom right there, so just in case we can able to get more items later on. So with that being said, folks, is that we get endings up this point right here. So join me next time for some more Let's Play of Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64. Is that we're about to be almost making our way to the very top of the Falls of Bowser's Castle, and hopefully battle some more enemies, and you pretty much get the idea of what this is going. So anyway, we are almost there for this point, guys. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.